there, kiddos. I hope you guys had a really good weekend. Here is your first video for the week. It's over literal equations, which you've seen before. You just haven't called them literal equations. So let's do definitions first. A literal equation is nothing more than an equation that contains two or more variables. You've seen literal equations before, although normally you probably call them a formula. Like the area formula for a rectangle is length times width. Has two variables, length and width, because they could both change. Volume formula for a prism is length times width times height. You call them formulas. Now we're going to call them literal equations. It means the same thing. It's just an equation that has two or more variables in it. The reason we're doing this is because what we're going to do today is take a literal equation and we're going to solve it. We're going to rewrite it by solving for one of the variables and getting that variable by itself. This skill is really important, not just in math, because of course we need it in algebra. Later on we're going to have to be able to take an equation and solve it for y so that we can graph it, that's coming up soon. But also in science, you do a lot of this in science, and it is very important to be able to manipulate an equation or a formula. So let's do a couple really quick. This number 2 here says, in the United States, shoe sizes and foot length are related by this formula. S equals 3F minus 24, where S is the shoe size and F is the foot length. The first thing you're asked to do is solve the formula for F, foot length, in terms of S, the shoe size. What that in terms of means that you want it to be F equals, because we're solving for F, and then the S has to be part of the equation on the other side. So we're going to start with what we have. This is the equation, and we want to get this F all by itself. The process of this is exactly the same as the process of solving an equation. So if this were a number, y'all would know what to do. You would take this and you would start by adding 24 to both sides so that these cancel. The only difference is over here, now what you're going to have is S plus 24 equals 3F, because you can't really add this and get 24S because they're not like terms. So we just put them together with the plus sign. Now F is still not by itself. To do that, I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. And when that happens, S divided by 3 is just the same thing as S over 3. 24 divided by 3 is 8. And that is what equals F. So there is the equation solved for F in terms of S. So F is by itself. The S is part of the equation on the other side. That's what all that fancy words mean. So we're going to use the formula really quick. According to this formula, if you wear a size 15 shoe, how long is your foot? Well, 15 shoe, that's going to be the S. So I'm going to plug that 15 in for S. And then just do the calculations. 15 divided by 3 is 5. And 5 plus 8 is 13. And so according to this formula, if you wear a size 15 shoe, then your foot is 13 inches long. So let's try another one. Part A, the area of a triangle can be found by using what formula? Hopefully you all know and remember that the formula for the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. It can also be written as 1/2 times base times height, but this one is the one that most people use. They mean the same thing, and this one is going to be easier for what we're doing. So part B says if you were given the area and the height, solve the formula for the base of the triangle. What they want you to do is get B all by itself. So they're asking you to get B all by itself. Well, if I want this B all by itself, this denominator has to go away, and y'all should know to get rid of the denominator, we multiply by what's in the denominator on both sides. So this becomes 2A equals BH. This means B times H. Well, to undo that multiplication so that I can get the B all by itself, I'm going to divide by H. And so B all by itself is 2 times the area divided by the height. that's what they were asking for. So if I knew the area and the height and wanted the base, this is what I would have to do. I would have to use this, and you probably wouldn't start here. You would probably plug the numbers into here and then do all of this algebra. But it's the same thing minus the numbers plugged in. So part C says, for a triangle with an area of 96 centimeters squared and a height of 8 centimeters, calculate the base. Well, I've already manipulated my formula. So I have 2 times the area, which is 96, divided by the height, which is 8. And 2 times 96 is going to be 192 divided by 8 is 24. So the base of my triangle is 24 centimeters. And it is very important to be able to manipulate formulas this way. Let's do another one. Okay, the United States uses the Fahrenheit system for temperature, whereas the United Kingdom uses the Celsius system. It's just like we use the standard measurement system. Everyone else uses the metric. Same thing. So the formula F equals 9/5 C plus 32 is what we use to convert temperatures into Celsius from Fahrenheit, or vice versa. Okay, so if I have a Celsius temperature, I plug it into here and get the Fahrenheit temperature. So the first thing they want us to do is solve that equation for C for Celsius. So we're going to rewrite the equation. And I want this C all by itself. Well, you see I have a fraction. I'm going to clear out my fraction by multiplying by the denominator of that fraction. That makes this side 5F. That cancels out this 5, leaving me with 9C. And then I have to do 32 times 5 also, because it is not part of the numerator originally. It's hanging out by itself. And that becomes 160. And then I solve like you're used to. You're going to subtract 160. But I can't really subtract these because that has an F and this doesn't. So it becomes 5F minus 160 equals 9C. And if I want that C by itself, I have to divide by 9. So I'm going to divide by 9 on both sides. Well, 5 does not divide by 9 evenly, and neither does 160. They do not make pretty numbers. So you can stop right here, and you can say that C equals 5 times F minus 160, and all of that is divided by 9. There is nothing wrong with this rewritten form of the equation. You could break it apart, but it's unnecessary. So then it asks, if the average human body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, what's the equivalent in Celsius? Well, since I've already solved for Celsius, I'm going to use that equation. 5 times 98.6, because that's the number they gave us for Fahrenheit, minus 160 divided by 9. So I take 98.6 times 5. It's going to be 493. So I have 493 minus 160 divided by 9. So I subtract my 160. And so I get 333 divided by 9. Which gives me 37. So my temperature in Celsius, the average body temperature in Celsius for a human is 37 degrees, where in Fahrenheit it's 98.6. So if you went to London and needed to go to the doctor and they took your temperature, anything above 37 degrees Celsius would not be okay. That would mean you had a fever. So that's what that means. So here's an example of one I was talking about. They say to solve this equation for y. The reason we are going to do this later is so that we can create a graph of this equation. And that's going to be really important. But for now, we just want to be able to practice doing it. So you have this right here. 3 times the quantity y plus 12 equals 2x. And I want the y by itself. But I can't do that while there are parentheses. So I'm going to distribute first. 3y plus 36 equals 2x. I just multiplied the 3 times both parts. And then I want this y by itself. So subtract 36 from both sides. This, by the way, is a skill you guys will get very good at because you will have to do this a lot. This becomes 2x minus 36. And then y is still not by itself, so I'm going to divide by 3 the entire thing. Then let's test. 2 does not divide by 3 evenly, so I'm not going to do that division, but 36 does. So I'm going to leave this as 2 divided by 3x, because it's the same thing, minus, now 36 divided by 3 is 12. These are the same thing. This is just the simplified version of the first one. If you left it this way for now, I would not count it wrong. But when we get to graphing, you are going to want this equation because each one of these little pieces has its own meaning and it's going to be important to the graph. So you need to be able to get to this step. So I really want you to practice simplifying all the way down. Don't just be like, well, I know she's okay with this. Go ahead and simplify all the way down because eventually that's going to be important. So there are 2 more. I want to focus on number 9 right here. This number 9 is one like you will see in science class, and I want to make something really, really clear. So here's what you are told. The kinetic energy, Ke, of an object is the energy it possesses because of its motion. The formula for kinetic energy is given to you here. Kinetic energy is 1/2 times mass times volume, velocity squared. M is the mass, V is the velocity. We want to solve this equation for the mass, which means we want M by itself. So here is the equation. And we want the M by itself. Something I need you to know right off the bat. This Ke serves as one variable on its own. It stands for kinetic energy, and we're going to leave it 2 variables because in science class it'll be 2 letters. It is not 2 separate variables. It is one variable together. So I want this M by itself. Well, the first thing, get rid of that fraction. So we're going to multiply everything by 2. These 2's cancel each other out. So over here you have 2 kinetic energies is equal to 1 mass velocity squared. So you just have mv squared. Now m still needs to be by itself, so I'm going to divide by v squared, and yes, I can divide by that whole entire thing. And so the mass of an object is 2 times its kinetic energy divided by its velocity squared. And that is that equation solved for mass. But what was really important is that you understood that this was all by itself. It is one variable. That Ke stands for kinetic energy. Okay, so I'm going to let you take this one, this I equals PRT, and I'm going to have you solve it for P, get the P all by itself, rewrite it, and then come back as soon as you have it and see if you got the right answer. So this is what it should be. This is hopefully what you got. You can divide by RT all in one step. You do not have to divide one and then the other, although you could have. But you can do it all at once. This is how you find the principal. It's the interest divided by the rate times the time. And so hopefully that's what you got. So have a good rest of your evening. I will see you guys tomorrow, and we will practice literal equations.